Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At Turnkey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, Turnkey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. Turnkey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Here's what's next on the Nice Guys on Business.
It's simple. How many people came in? What percentage bought? Sales are only a function of three things: traffic, how many people visited; conversion rate, what percentage of those visits turned into sales; and how much did each of those sales represent, average ticket. So traffic times conversion rate times average sale equals sales. If you want to know what lever to pull, you need to break it down into these underlying drivers. You need more traffic, yeah.
They beat me. Straight up. Pay them. Pay the nice guys their money.
Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
Okay, Nice Guy community, welcome back to the episode. Of course, my name is Doug Sandler. I've been hosting this show for a little bit over 10 years. Thank you so much for coming back over and over and over again. 1,600 plus episodes of the show. And sometimes when you think that you've seen it all, one more thing enters your radar. Enter today's guest. So Mark Ryski, let me talk a little bit about him. He turned a college side hustle into a global retail analytics powerhouse. He's the founder and CEO of HeadCount, not the band, but the company that's been helping brick and mortar retailers crush it when it comes to traffic and conversion. The data since before going to Google Analytics was even a thing. Mark literally wrote the book on using store traffic and conversion metrics to drive retail performance. His work has been featured in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and even in RetailWire's BrainTrust. I didn't even know there was such a publication. But if you've ever wondered why your local store suddenly got better at making you buy stuff, Mark's probably behind it, or at least he's got the answers. Let's dive into the numbers, the insights, and how he's helping retailers all over the world turn foot traffic into gold. Mark, excited to chat with you. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Terrific. Doug, it's a pleasure to be here and be part of the show today. Thank you.
You are quite welcome. Thanks for being here. I want to talk about the title of the book for a second. Store Traffic is a Gift. Talk about the definition let's talk about the definition of store traffic, not just buyers, but people actually walking into a store. And let's talk about why that is a gift. Can we start there?
Yeah, that's a great place to start, Doug. Look, consider this. Every hour of every day, shoppers visit retail stores intending to buy, but they leave without buying. And it's these folks that came, visited the store, and left without buying that's the real potential that most retailers today are just completely oblivious to. And so really, when you think about what happened with the pandemic, the pandemic smashed into the retail industry like a meteorite. It changed it forever in the way shoppers shop and the way retailers need to retail. But one of the most important lessons that came from the pandemic, I believe, is just how precious that store traffic, that store visit is. And that's what inspired the name for this book. And that is that store traffic is a gift. And my whole hope is to get retailers to really focus on just how valuable and important each one of those visits are.
One of the things I was doing while I was compiling some of the information about you and doing a little research, I saw this very short video that you did. I think it was like 3 minutes long, and you talk about traffic in the store, and you did a little bar graph, and in that graph you showed the most popular hours for a specific store, I guess it was, and then you showed after the peak hour, you showed the second peak hour, another one that might have been just a little higher or a little lower than the previous, as the amount of conversion went way down. And I was interested. I'm like, I wonder if that means that things like, it was getting towards the end of the day. Maybe the workers were a little bit tired. Maybe they were overwhelmed by too much traffic. It didn't staff up properly. So I'd love you to just maybe share a verbal version of that bar chart, because it really did make an impact for me, even in that 3 minutes.
Well, I appreciate you pointing that out. And, a simple bar chart can really be informative. It's my favorite kind of chart. Look, the reality is people are coming in and visiting the store all throughout the day. And if you know precisely how many people are coming in, then it's a relatively straightforward exercise to align your staff to make sure you have staff on to serve those visits. But if you don't have this basic data, then you're just flying blind. And the example you give is a good one. So you have people visiting the store, conversion rate. Conversion rate is simply how many sales transactions compared to the visits. Mm-hmm. So if 100 people visit the store and you made 50 sales, 50 transactions, you'd have a 50% conversion rate. It's as simple as that. So what we look for is where are conversion rates sagging by time of day? Because if you can pinpoint right to the precise hours of the day when people are in the store but conversion rates are sagging, it makes it quite a straightforward exercise to then try to think about, okay, well, who's on? Are we tasking versus serving customers? Do I have the right people on? Do they have the right skills? You can start to tease out the answers, try different things, and improve results. But without the simple data, you tell me how you figure it out.
Oh, yeah. It seems like it would be very, very difficult. And I go back to like when I was a kid, there was a little shopping center that was by my house, little strip center, and it had maybe, I don't know, 15, maybe 18 stores in it. And we would walk into a specific store. It was called the Browsery. And in the Browsery, it's all sorts of knickknacks and just like little fun things. And if somebody were to come up to you, and they did a really good job of making sure they approached you as soon as you walked into the store, or at least gave you a moment to walk in without you feeling too much pressure, they would always ask, is there something we can help you with, or something like that version of that. And like almost the knee-jerk response to me is, no, I'm just looking. Now, are there people, are retailers missing the opportunity to make a sale with the I'm just browsing people because they are not approaching them too fast, approaching them with, how can I help you, as opposed to, isn't that a beautiful thing that you just picked up, or maybe asking a leading question like that? Tell me how important the questions that people are asking, and is everybody a potential buyer that walks into that store?
Wow, lots of good questions. Okay, sorry, I'm going to start with the last question you posed, because I think it really speaks to the heart of the matter, and that is everyone who visits the store actually a buyer? And the answer is probably not. But you shouldn't ever make the assumption that they're not, and you should assume that they are.
Right.
Okay, so that's number one. And unfortunately, too often what happens is people make judgments about whether that's a real buyer or not a buyer. If you treat everybody as if they're there to purchase, then you're going to deliver your services in a way and deliver a level of engagement in a way that's going to improve your chances of converting or making a sale. Look, there's nothing wrong with the scenario you just described. But I talk about a Yelp review that I put in the book that I think really illustrates the point.
Yeah.
So this person walks into a store to buy a television. There's a greeter at the front door, and the greeter says, "Oh, welcome to the store. I can't help you, but TVs are over in that direction." So the shopper goes over there, and he's excited, and he finds what he's looking for. And he's standing and waiting for somebody to come and engage with him. So nobody comes, and he tries to make himself look really obviously groping around. He goes on to say, and he provided excruciating detail, and I put it all in the book because I think it's so illustrative. And so he goes, nobody helps. So he walks up to the service counter, and he says, I approached the girl behind the counter. I said, "Hey, I'm looking for help with the television." And she says, "Oh, we'll have somebody over with you in just a moment." Anyway, you can imagine this goes on, and he goes back to her again, and this happens several times until he finally gets so frustrated. He says, "I just dumped my stuff on the floor. Nobody was helping. I go walking out the door, and the person who greeted me says, 'Hey, sorry I wasn't able to help you. I hope you had have a nice day.'"
Right.
And he walks out, and the shopper goes, "The store was dead. What a joke."
Right.
The reality is, if you go through the story, there was no less than 6 opportunities to engage this customer, and they let that person leave. So To the point that you made, can I help you today? You're right. It's almost instinctively shoppers will say, no, I don't need help. The problem is 30 seconds later, a minute later, 2 minutes later, they may need help.
They need help, right?
Okay. But what happens often is the sales staff or the retail frontline staff will often go, oh, I already asked that customer. He didn't need any help.
Right.
Okay. So it's maintaining ownership of that visitor and being mindful that they may not need help this moment, but you don't give up the obligation to, because if any of the staff in the scenario I just pointed out would have kept their eye out for this customer, they would have sold him a television.
These are the greatest examples because I am so, what I think, tuned in to the customer experience that for me, I want to make sure that I am over delivering, under promising, and I'm over servicing that client, over communicating with that client without being pressure. I want to use two examples if we could for a second, and I don't know whether you do or don't represent either one of these brands, so I'm just going to share with my community a little disclaimer that Mark is not, we didn't prep for this. I'm just going to share examples, and Mark, if you feel like these are too close to home, feel free to just say, hey, I'm going to use other examples other than this. Two examples I want to use are the Apple Store and Home Depot. Apple Store I walk into, usually a really crowded store. The customer experience is such that I can browse while I'm waiting because I'm looking at the actual technology that I'm very interested in. I oftentimes will go into the Apple Store just to browse because I'm like trying to find new ideas for equipment that I already have because I own a lot of Apple stuff. Home Depot, on the other hand, I walk into Home Depot. Oftentimes I need to make a purchase. It is because it is something that right now I must have. The challenge with the differences between those stores is that Apple will over-deliver even in an environment where it's extremely crowded, where I find if I walk into Home Depot, there may be 20 people that are walking up and down the aisles in their orange vests, and I can't get somebody to help me if my life depended on it. If I ask a question, yeah, that's somewhere down on aisle 7. Now, aisle 7 might be literally a quarter of a mile away on the next, down there. Can you help explain the differences between those two experiences? And again, if Apple and Home Depot are clients or aren't clients and you wish to or don't wish to use them as an example, that's totally fine with me. So share now with what I've just started you with.
Yeah, the great examples. And the truth is every retail store is unique in its own way, but certainly categories and certain brands have certain dynamics. Apple is really extraordinarily unique in that they're not a traditional retailer. They're a consumer products brand company. And really their stores are three-dimensional representations of their brand experience.
Yes.
And, people go there for different reasons. It's not just to convert or just to buy. They often do, and they generate tons and tons of sales, but it's a very different experience. I might throw another one more into the mix in a place like Costco, which no service. It's stack stuff on pallets and watch people buy.
But
so
you
get these extremes.
That. When I walk into Costco, it's like I expect not to be helped. I don't expect that when I go into Home Depot. I need help. If I'm trying to find tape in a 3-acre building, it's like, where is tape? I can't find the freaking tape. If I'm in Costco, I'm like, I guess it's on me to find the tape. It's somewhere around. That's just me. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, but let's go to Home Depot then. One of the other big drivers, so there's a few big levers to what drives conversion or creates conversion barriers, and staffing and staff engagement. But just finding product is one of the reasons people will leave a big box store.
Totally.
And the irony and the sad part is the retailer likely there's a good chance they had the product or at least a substitute product, but because the shopper merely couldn't find what they were looking for. And so somebody like Home Depot, if they knew their traffic and conversion rates to the hours of the day, they could start looking for those sags. And then, wow, what's the strategy? Okay, so you have those orange vests, but are those orange vests, are they actually facilitating conversion or not? And they should be.
So I think about it when I walk into Home Depot, even if they have all of the analytics that they need to have, meaning they understand the peak hours of traffic, they understand where the conversion is falling or slipping, they understand the peak levels of conversion there. I feel like it's a culture issue I'd rather not have five associates hanging out, all having conversations with each other, or talking about inventory, and allowing me to walk. If I am ever walking by a group of 3 or 4 or 5 people that are, and I'm not picking on Home Depot, there's plenty of stores that do this, but Home Depot was the target just because I started there. If I ever walk by as a customer, I want them to stop and I want them to turn around and say, "What can I help you find today?" And if I were to be given that information, I'd go out of my way to find a Home Depot as opposed to a local hardware store. I love the local hardware store that's here in my small town of Ojai, because I know while it's only a several hundred square feet of inventory, much less than Home Depot, I know that I'm going to get Jack or Susan or Fred to walk me to the part, help fit it in my hand, and make sure that they are, "Hey, what else can I help you out with today?" Is that an experience that you see over and over again in your world?
Yes, indeed. And ultimately, it's the kind of service that local retailer provides that really is the essence of what great retailing is all about, delivering that level of personal, personal service, personal service. Period.
Yeah, so and getting the experience up to par.
Yeah. Back to your example about walking by 5 or 6 associates and they're all chatting. They need to understand that store traffic is a gift, and their primary directive is to serve that traffic and treat it accordingly. It's in the book, I talk about stores of the future and AI and automation. And I posit that if you created a robot, a retail robot, what would their primary directive be? And it would be to convert the shoppers that come into the store.
Yeah.
And so it's as simple as that. It's mindset. Sometimes it can be the store just doesn't have enough staff resourcing, because retailers are often challenged. They want to cut expenses, and too frequently and sadly, they will cut back on labor because it is one of their higher costs. But then they save a little on the bottom line, but unfortunately, then their conversion rates sag and they're missing on the top line. Customers leave without buying. And then even worse, will go online, write a scathing review on some platform, and leave a permanent digital scar on that brand.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about like when you started in this whole counting traffic arena, it was well in advance of anything in the way of technology was there. And the technology that people could have at their fingertips, literally getting a little disc when you walk into the store and help you geolocate a product because you're typing it into a cart that you're walking with that will tell you exactly where to go. They have a capital investment in that, but they also have an opportunity for increasing conversion X% by having this little piece of technology. I'm assuming there's many examples of how technology has improved your life in the retail world rather than adversely affecting what you do. Oh, well, why do we need Mark? Because now we have technology to do that. Well, you need to interpret the data and actually to do something with it, right? Is that where you come in?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's so many solutions being offered to retailers today. And, it's sort of like, hey, if you use our technology, it'll rain money and, sales will go up. It's never quite that simple. But, the example you gave is a really good one. And I'll extend it for a moment.
Please.
I encountered this large retailer that decided that they were going to try using handheld devices for their associates that have inventory and product information and so on and so forth. And the whole intention is that armed with this device, that the associate should be able to serve shoppers better and consequently, deliver better results. So the executive was talking about how this technology is so great. And I asked, okay, how are you measuring the impact that those devices are having? And he said, this was a 1,700 store chain. So it's a large enterprise class retailer.
Yeah.
They said they were testing them. Hundreds of devices were being tested in the field with associates. And I said, okay, so what quantitative measures were you using to determine whether those devices were making a difference? He said, we interviewed our associates, and they said they were really the devices were really helpful. And it's like, yeah,
I could just think of counting traffic in the door, and then conversion would be the easiest one. How many people did you have walk in versus how many people did you have walk out without or with making a sale? That would be partly part of the impact would have been from those little handheld devices, I would assume, correct?
Exactly. And so that's the point. Sales might have gone down. Let's say they implemented these handheld devices in a sample of stores and sales went down. You go, oh, those things didn't do anything. But if I told you store traffic was down 20%, I might say, no, those devices quite likely helped you convert more of the traffic you had. So they were very effective, obfuscated by the lack of sales, which are driven by traffic, which the store doesn't control.
I think about, again, I'm going to give another example, Nice Guy Community. If Mark does or doesn't serve this client, I don't know, but I'm going to use it as the example because this is a highly converting store, in my opinion. I walk into Nordstrom's Rack 10 years ago, and Nordstrom's Rack, when you have something in your hand, you go to the front and you wait in the zigzag line that gets you to one of the 5 or 10 associates that they have up there. Oftentimes it would be a long wait, and sometimes I would say, I just don't have the time. I'm on a lunch break or something like that. A handful of years ago, they put in place where the floor associates had a little handheld device that when you pick up the item, they can actually ring it right then and there. You don't have to wait in the front line. And I thought, what a great thing for this store to have. They're not counting traffic, but they are counting obviously, they want to make more sales. How cool is that to be able to have something like that where technology is really benefiting them? Again, I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Excellent example, referred to as mobile POS, mobile point of sale. And I think it's a great solution to help minimize conversion friction or conversion barriers for the reason you just described. Why do we make customers line up like cattle, queue them up, have long lines, people get frustrated and leave without buying? Why not be able to purchase anywhere within the store whenever you like? Now, there are security concerns. There are some practical reasons why you want to be careful about this. But I actually experienced that in a Nordstrom Rack store myself. And it made all the difference in the world, and it was a wonderful experience. I don't know why more retailers don't do it. That's the truth.
So let's talk about ancillary services that could be the result of being able to, or counting traffic, walking in and out, converting or not converting. So you started with this initial idea, and I'm assuming the initial idea was, hey, let's count traffic to find out how we can improve conversion. Is that a fair statement? Is that it's in its simplest terms? Was that what you started with?
Not quite.
Okay, go ahead. You tell me.
Okay, here's the origin story. I was the marketing manager for a computer retail store. This goes back to the early 1990s. Mm-hmm. All right, so this is what
pre-technology.
Doug, you may not recall this. You may not be of a certain vintage, but it was when you bought software off a shelf.
Of course,
personal computers were $5,000.
Of course,
it was that era.
Yes.
Okay, so I was the marketing manager, and I was responsible for creating promotions. So we would run local advertising, television, radio, newspaper, all that stuff. And the store would get busy. We only had a single store, but it was a big store and we were a pretty successful retailer. People would come in, they'd buy, but invariably at the end of the promotion, and this happened at the end of one big event we did, the owner of the store at the end of the day counted the money in the till and he said, it was just okay. Mm-hmm. Yet the store was overrun with shoppers and visitors. And despite having 20 really capable sales reps on the floor and serving customers, doing all the right things, we couldn't get around and connect with everybody. So my problem was my advertising and marketing plan was not being given the credit. And it wasn't just about self-serving, but it was like the advertising did what it was intending to do, bring prospects. We didn't convert it. That's where it started for me. And I said, I need to count how many people are visiting the store as an indicator of the effectiveness of that marketing. And then converting is where we go next. And so I wanted to find a traffic counter, and this was back in the early 1990s. It was hard to find. Anyway, I faxed a request to this company. I know this is dating. What's a fax? You'll have to explain that to your listeners. And it was $2,500. And so I go to the store owner that I work for, and I said, "Oh, this traffic counter is going to help us understand, what our visitation is, and so on and so forth, and measure the impact of our marketing." It was $2,500, and at the time we were spending about $250,000 a year on advertising. I thought this was like a no-brainer.
A no-brainer, right?
You know what he said to me?
Not in the budget.
He said, $2,500, we could do more advertising with that.
Okay, so you can bring people into the store with a great marketing campaign, but if you don't do something with them when they get there, your marketing campaign goes for naught. So let's talk about the next step. Now, how do you start punching holes in what happens once somebody gets to the store? How do you know? Is it a culture thing? Is it a training thing? Is it a staffing thing? Is it a management thing? Let's talk about what happens next after they count. Is that something that you get into with your customers, or does your service begin and end with, I'm going to count traffic so that you can take the next steps?
Well, what we've learned, and I've been doing this now for 22 years, is that, retailers also want a little more perspective and context around what to do next.
Yes.
So let's understand traffic. Let's understand your conversion trends. And if you have multiple stores, what we want to do is we want to see which are your super converting stores. Which of your stores are doing the very best job? How do they compare? How does this store convert so much higher than these other stores?
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing differently? Let's start breaking it down. And we almost always start with staff and labor.
Of course.
How much labor are you putting into the stores? Because here's what will happen. Store could get busy, conversion rates fall, they don't have enough staff, sales go down. Guess what happens? That store gets less staff because their budgets go down. Traffic comes in, they get even worse service, and it spirals.
Oh,
that's what happens. If you don't know your traffic, then you're guessing. All you know is sales weren't good.
Is this always a people issue, or is there? Tell me about other things that could be going on within the retail environment.
Right. So we think of it as conversion barriers, and some of these conversion barriers are controllable, and others are non-controllable. So a controllable conversion barrier is, I don't have enough staff on. I just need to allocate more hours. That's controllable. Non-controllable is, let's harken back to the dark COVID days when you go into a store and you're looking for hygiene wipes, okay, or toilet paper, and you go into the store and they stocked out. Well, there's not a good replacement product if they don't have toilet paper. It's not like you're going to buy something else. So a stock out of a fast-moving product is not something the store could have controlled unless there's a substitute. And if there's no substitute, that's a non-controllable conversion factor.
It seems like there could be an unlimited number of reasons why, after you count the traffic, why a client should be moving forward but aren't moving forward. It seems like they're going to come up with every reason why. Who is typically the one that really embraces I want to make a change in what we're doing? And I'm assuming you see a lot of organizations that make changes in what happens after you say, here's what we've counted, here's what has been bought, here's what the conversion is. We can get that number up higher. Here's some ideas. Are people, do they tend to be open to hearing the solutions to the symptoms that are being created in this unwell organization?
Yeah, most times they are, in my experience. I mean, they're looking for better outcomes and they're looking for ways to do that. Unfortunately, I think today, many retailers that I encounter are looking for the silver bullet. They're looking for the solution. You plug it in and things just get better. And nothing really works that way, especially in the physical retail world. There's lots of moving pieces. But I can tell you this, that the retailers that have never looked at basic store traffic and conversion data before and they see it for the first time almost always have two reactions. Number one, they're shocked at how much traffic their stores receive. That's number one. And they're shocked at how low their conversion rates are. And therein is the start of their journey. And when a retailer starts looking at this data and they're looking at it daily at the hourly level and so on and so forth, it becomes ingrained into the way they operate their stores. And it's funny, they go from retailers that start by saying, I don't know why I'd want to count traffic. I can see my sales data. This isn't going to tell me something I don't already know.
Right.
That's where they start. When they start looking at this data, they then say, how did I ever operate my stores without knowing what my store traffic counts are?
It would just seem like that which can be measured can be controlled. And it seems like if you don't know how many people are walking into your store, then and you do know the sales, but you don't understand the conversion, it's only a number. The number is, if I made $1,000 yesterday, but made $500 today, is it because I had less traffic in the store, or is it because I had less conversion I could have had more traffic, but less conversion. And ultimately it's a crapshoot. You just have no idea unless you start counting? It seems so simple that people would want to do it, but yet I'm sure only a small percentage of stores, brick and mortar, are doing this.
Well, I can tell you that in mall audits that I've conducted, and by that I mean I literally visited a sample of malls, visited each retailer in these malls, and tried to identify whether they're tracking traffic electronically or not. And based on this, and it's not a scientific study, but based on this directional data, only about half of retailers are counting traffic in their stores. Now, consider we're in the age of big data. Well, big data started in the 2010s. Like, this is not a new idea. Nor do you need to be a rocket scientist. This isn't AI. You don't. It's simple. How many people came in? What percentage bought? Sales are only a function of three things: traffic, how many people visited; conversion rate, what percentage of those visits turned into sales; and how much did each of those sales represent? Average ticket. So traffic times conversion rate times average sale equals sales. If you want to know what lever to pull, you need to break it down into these underlying drivers. You need more traffic. Yeah. Go ahead.
Again, it seems just so simple, and yet if 50% of the people are doing it, that means the other 50% need to read this book. And the 50% that are doing it need to read the book because they can see what opportunities that they have to move forward or to increase this conversion number. I'm assuming the number is also affected by the type of store you're walking into. For example, you're walking into a Five Below, which might be a $5 purchase or less, oftentimes, versus a K Jewelers that might have an average sale of $250 or $300. Is that a fair guesstimation of where of how it works? It's just based upon sometimes the products that these companies are selling.
That's exactly right. Yes, each retail segment has different conversion profiles. So take jewelry, tends to have and specialty stores may not have a ton of traffic. They tend to have lower conversion. Jewelry stores tend to have much lower conversion because there's often multiple visits before purchase gets made. But you have to serve every visit, and it's one-to-one. Right? You can't generally walk into a jewelry store, just grab something off the shelf and go to checkout. So that's where staff scheduling becomes really vitally important. Then the other side of the spectrum would be general merchandise stores. They'll have high traffic and also have conversion rates 70%, 80% or more. But even moving that conversion by 1 or 2 percentage points can be super material financially.
I think about things like just a self-checkout. Self-checkout would, I would think, create a larger conversion of that traffic that's walking in, but I don't know that. Like my mom, who is 92 years old, would never go into the self-checkout aisle. She wants to go to the human being that's there, but they usually have less human beings that are there when they have self-checkout. So that means the line is a little bit longer. It seems like there's got to be this fine line between having too much technology, which will help conversion, versus not having enough technology, which might create a lesser conversion as well. Wow, you got a lot to think about while you're doing this, don't you?
Yeah, we do. And what you're really, I think, getting to here, Doug, is these simple metrics contextualize everything else. So all these questions, these scenarios we're describing, it all keeps coming back to what was the traffic, what was the conversion rate, and what was different. So it comes back to these basic ideas that just contextualize everything that goes on in the store.
Let's talk about the book for a moment. I know we haven't spent a lot of time talking about it, but we've spent probably time talking about the stuff that's inside the book itself. But I want to talk about the process of putting the book together. Was the hope that this would get into the hands of associates that are working or retailers that are working within the store, the sales clerks, or was the hope for it to get into the hands of management? Or maybe the answer is yes. To both of those.
Okay, so this is my third book. So this is like the third effort. I wrote this book very deliberately for anyone who works in retail. So the part-time associate, junior employee could read this book and understand the concepts. And it's also easy enough for the CEO to understand. Mm-hmm. It applies to everybody, because the fact of the matter is, if you want to improve conversion rates, that only happens in the physical store. The only people that do that are your frontline people. So this isn't something that's head office, the big the smarty people at head office know, and they move the levers and things improve. It's day to day, every hour, every day people visit and leave without buying. And so your associates need to understand what traffic conversion sags are and be accountable for those results. So no, it's important that it gets to everyone. And it was very deliberate with this third effort.
This is the kind of stuff that fascinates me. It's the kind of stuff that makes me say things like, I want to be involved in this. It's because my role as the guy that runs this Turnkey Productions is it's less about the technology. Like, I don't know much about technology at all. That's why I have a great partner that's a technology guy and a systems and process guy. I have a wonderful team that knows how to do editing, distribution, processing, all of the video and audio stuff. I deal with the customer experience. For me, it's all about making sure. I'm like somebody that would read the book, even though it's written in brick and mortar language, probably. I'm the guy that reads the book and says, okay, I'm going to convert that to the service-based online industry because I'm really interested in that as well. Can you share maybe how much overlap or crossover you think is in the contents of the book up for interpretation by somebody that runs a service-based business like me that's not a brick and mortar?
Yeah, you know what? I think that there are elements, because any business that receives visits or has to, receive and serve visitors can benefit from this. We have museums, casinos. We got asked to track traffic into church, which
it's because they want to know how much their dollars, the contributions coming in the door, right?
A whole new interpretation of conversion. I will say, But awesome. Because the movement of people is informative. And if you're serving people, knowing how many and when is really kind of a duh. It's important to know.
Agreed. Mark, this is a fascinating subject. I could talk to you for hours about this, but I want to make sure we're being concise for those that are in our listening audience and being respectful of your time as well. Is there something that I should be asking you about what you do and how you do it and the process of writing this book and maybe what's in the book that I'm not asking you, that you say, hey, dummy, you forgot to ask me about this? And I know you wouldn't say that, but is there something that you can say, dummy? It's okay. My audience calls me that all the time. So is there anything that I'm not asking you that I should be asking you about the book, Mark?
Yeah, you know what? You've asked so many good questions, Doug. You know what? All I can say is this. It still is remarkable to me that some of the simplest ideas are still the most powerful ideas.
Agreed.
And isn't that a recurring theme? And simplicity is so powerful on many levels, and traffic and conversion is just one of those that's been sitting under the noses of retailers I'm sure that cave retailers were chiseling their counts on the side of the cave. And so some get it, some don't. But this isn't sophisticated. It's every retailer, and it's simple, and everyone can do this and be better with it.
Great. I so appreciate that you sharing that. I wrote a book in 2015 called Nice Guys Finish First, and the premise of the book basically was tell the truth, be a nice guy, return your communication. And one of my reviews, the only 1-star review that I got on the book, was, been hearing the same thing over and over again. I said, until everybody does it, my message has not gotten through to everybody. So for me, the simplest is the way to go. I actually felt inspired when the guy wrote, I've heard this over and over again, and yet you're not being a nice person right now by sharing this review. So fuel's in the fire. I mean, gas is thrown on the fire with that one for sure.
Indeed.
Mark, thank you for sharing. For those in our community that want to get more information, as of the recording of this, we're July 17th of 2025. The book comes out in about 2 months, in September of 2025. It's called Store Traffic is a Gift. It's by Mark Ryski, and he's the guy that was here today sharing all this great content. Mark, thanks for sharing, and thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure, Doug. Thank you.
Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice or the power of counting traffic coming in the door. Special thanks to Mark Ryski. All of his information, including access to his website and his book, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
You've put enough in little Johnny's 529. Now, it's time to really help out someone in need. The Nice Guys on Business need your support. Please go to patreon.com, and for as little as $2 a month, you can help these guys continue to ramble on and on and on, week after week after week. Thank you for your support. And boy, is it weak.